Hey folks, welcome. Beth on the left, Hillary on the right, me in the middle. Yay.
Yay.
Thanks Hillary for making this happen. We appreciate it. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Say that again.
I said, thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
Can
okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, now we hear you. Now we hear you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Oh no.
Move to your right a little bit so you'll be better centered. The other right. There we go. Got
There
it.
we go. Okay.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are going to have some fun tonight. Hillary actually has a project she's working on that she's going to show us in addition to a bunch of photos. So, yeah, we're going to have a great time. It's going to be fun. So Hillary Waters Fayle, and for those who have not listened to the podcast, and we're taking names for people who have not listened, she's assistant
You should have
professor.
listened.
That's right. She's assistant professor and head of the fiber area in the Department of Craft Materials Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University. And she gets that all on one business card. It's amazing. So we'll get to her in just a second. Just a couple of announcements. Sunday's guest is Hanny Newton, who does some fascinating and unique gold work art. And so you'll want to catch that for sure. No drawing tonight. Still looking for people to contribute images for me to use during Wednesday show posts. And then also looking for people to volunteer to do the Stitch Hour shows with us, to show off their stuff during the Stitch Hours. And then a reminder to be sure and catch last week's Thread Talk with Kathy Ray, a tremendous talk about metal threads. And then next month she'll follow up with more of that. So take some time to go listen to that. If metal threads are something you're curious about or that frustrate you, Kathy will help you. Either way. So tonight we're going to learn about doing needlework stitching on leaves, as we've mentioned a couple of times. And if you missed the Sunday podcast, go listen to that with Hillary because you'll learn so much. I'm just going to shut up, put you on the screen here, Hillary, full screen, and let you tell us about what you're working on.
Okay. So right now I'm working on, and this is in the very beginning stages, but I went to New York City a couple weeks ago and I stopped into an exotic plant shop, and they were just selling lots and lots of cut leaves, for probably special occasions, weddings, bouquets, whatever. And they had this bunch of kind of like really faded leaves that were going out. They didn't look so hot anymore. And I said, how much for those? And he said, $2. I was like, that's a deal. I'll take it. So I just, this is a little bit bigger than the type of leaf that I normally work on. Sorry, it's mirrored, so I keep flipping it the wrong way, trying to show you. This is kind of fun for me to just to like work on something that's a little bit larger and a little bit less structured. I've just been wanting to try something where just, I'm kind of basically just drawing with thread without much of a plan. And so I haven't gotten too far along on this yet, but it's kind of my constant, I do a little bit here and there, and that's what I've been working on. So I'm using just like a regular DMC thread. I'm couching, and I've got 2 threads on my needle here for my top thread and just a single thread of the same color as my working thread. And I'm using a size 12 between needle, which is teeny tiny. And that's about the smallest needle I've been able to find and successfully get something threaded.
Yeah.
Getting 2 strands of the DMC through the eye is pretty challenging sometimes. So that's what I'm working on currently.
So give people a little background about how you got to the point where you're doing needlework on leaves.
Yeah, so that's it's kind of a long story, but I'll just kind of paraphrase by saying that I was always very interested in textiles growing up, and interested also in nature and learning about the natural world, and kind of very, very much interested in thinking about how to protect the environment from a young age. So that was always sort of like in the back of my mind as something that I wanted to do. And I had these two things going on, like art and embroidery, textiles, wanting to make things, and then this other side, which was wanting to know about nature, natural sciences, and environmental stewardship. So in hindsight, I could have done them both, but I felt as though I had to choose one or the other in college and going to school. And so I ended up choosing to go to school for art. I went for textile design, and um, I was lucky enough during that time to actually go to study abroad in Manchester at the Manchester Metropolitan University in the United Kingdom. And they have a specific degree for embroidery. So I studied there, and it was amazing. I fell in love with all kinds of things, but specifically insertion stitching while I was there. And then I came back to the US and was just thinking about like, what can I stitch on? Like this is what I want to be doing. And I just, at some point, I remember looking up and just seeing these leaves, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is the thing. That's the way for me to sort of marry these two ideas together. And I just found that the metaphor of using, at the time, I had mentioned that I was obsessed with these insertion stitching, which is insertion stitches are a way of joining. They're a joining stitch. So joining two pieces of material together. And in this case, I felt like I was not only joining material, but the two things that I cared most about in the world. And so now I think all of my work kind of deals with this idea of making a connection between nature and the human hand.
Yeah. Now, when you start to do leaves, pretty steep learning curve. I'm sure you wrecked a lot of leaves just getting to the point where you could get needle and thread through it.
That's definitely true. I did wreck a lot of leaves. And for the longest time, I kind of was a believer of like use the materials and the tools that you have at hand. And, you can do so much with so little, which I still believe wholeheartedly. But I have come to realize that using specific tools, like the tiniest needles you can find, makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So
Right,
for a long
right.
time, I was using bigger needles, and it just was like punching huge holes through the leaves, and that wasn't a good look. And so it did take a while to kind of get it finessed and figure it all out. And definitely there was a learning curve there. And it still is an incredibly fragile material, and there's no getting around that.
Yeah.
So I think just so much of the learning is actually just training your hands on how to hold something that's that fragile and delicate. And you're obviously not using a hoop like you would typically with embroidery. And so just kind of just being aware also of this very fragile, delicate object that you're kind of flipping around in order to stitch all the time. And I think I might have mentioned it in the podcast, and it's the stupidest thing, but in doing that, I've broken more leaves by just getting them like snagged on my clothing or something stupid. And it's so sad.
Yeah, there's no repairing that ground cloth. No.
No.
Nope.
Where
Once
where
it's
are
broken,
you
it's broken.
where are you in terms of mastering the technique? Do you feel like you're halfway, three quarters? Do you feel like you have a really good handle on it? Like you could identify good leaves to stitch on, pick them up and make something happen? Or do you feel like there's still a good deal of trial and error as you do these things?
I think at this point, I do have a good sense of what's going to work and what's not. And I mean, certainly things still surprise me. I'll pick a leaf that I think is going to be great, and then it wilts in a really bizarre way, or gets moldy or discolors or
Yeah.
something. And that's kind of, not always something that I've worked with them long enough, and I know kind of what I'm doing a little bit enough that it seems like Okay. There's it's nice to be reminded that things don't always go exactly as you are, thinking.
All
It's
right,
it's
so
part of working with an organic material.
Yeah.
we have a question here. So are there some kinds of leaves that you favor?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I live in Virginia now, so I live in Richmond, Virginia, and there's a plethora here of leaves that stay green year round. So we've got like camellia leaves and magnolia leaves and um, ligustrum leaves and holly, but holly are really sharp, so I
Yeah.
try not to use those. Um, but those leaves tend to be pretty good for this type of work just because they hold up pretty well. They're meant to stay on the tree all year round, so they are by design just a little bit tougher. Um, and they won't usually, depending on when you pick them and how old the leaf is, they won't tear as easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and do you pre-treat the leaves?
I tend not to. I mean, there are certain leaves that are so fragile that they must be pre-treated in order to work with it all. But if I'm just working with a leaf like I just mentioned, like a ligustrum or magnolia or camellia, like I don't do anything to those. And I think that there's a real poetry to that. I mean, for me, there is, at least just working with the material in its purest form.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then what do you do with the finished product once you're done stitching on it?
Once I'm done stitching, I mean, I usually have them photographed just because I've learned my lesson, and
Yeah.
it's never too late to break a leaf. So, you have to get a picture of it before you break it. um,
Oh,
no, I'm
yeah,
just
I can
kidding. I
see
don't break
that.
that
I can see that absolutely. Photograph it, hurry.
many. No, I mean, I do. It's good to have your work documented. So I do that, and then usually I will have them framed. But before, during, after I'm working on them, I usually press them as well. So by the time I'm finished working on them, they're like totally pressed, and all of the moisture has left the leaf at an even rate. So it's not going to break down or deteriorate at that point. And if you look at like specimens that we have in herbariums, they're hundreds of years old. And not that I'm definitely not preserving my work to the level that these leaves are preserved, but I do think that, in framing them and pressing them and having them behind UV protected glass and on acid free archival material, which is how I usually frame them, they'll probably last longer than me.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
a couple of questions, more questions. Um, Vegetable leaves or house plants? Have you tried those?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, um, some houseplants definitely work better than others. I have a rubber tree leaf that it'll occasionally drop leaves, and I'll use those as it does. Um, but people have given me like fiddle leaf fig leaves, and that's a pretty great leaf to use too. I had, this is a little bit gross, but I had an orchid leaf that someone gave me, and I was pressing it between some books, and it totally rotted. Like, it had so much moisture in it that it just turned to mush.
Oh.
It kind of like
Oh,
ruined the two books that it was smushed in between. It was
Oh.
really icky. Yeah.
oh no. Oh no. And we don't get phone books that much anymore, so it's not like you can use like,
Oh
how,
no, they were
kids
like
used to,
nice books. Yeah.
Oh.
oh, terrible,
Oh.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one that you have there, talk about that. So you got half dead leaves at the plant store that
Yeah.
he should have given you because they were going in the trash after he closed. But
Right.
$2, whatever. So give us a little idea of how you got that ready so you could stitch on it.
I mean, this I literally I sometimes I draw on the back of the leaves, and you can kind of see that I mean, maybe you can't really see
Well, here,
actually, but I
let me
stitched a
see if I
little
can
bit.
zoom in a little bit here.
Yeah, it's tough to see no matter what, I think. So here's what the back looks like. I'm
Yeah.
having such a hard time with this mirroring situation. But you can see kind of here where my finger is that I've got a little bit of a line sketched out for myself there. So I did that, and then I just started stitching, and that was working great. And then I had to put that down for a week or so. And by the time I got back, I had not been pressing it very carefully um, when I wasn't working on it. And so by the time I got back, it was really crispy
Oh,
and really delicate. And normally pressing them a little bit really helps with how crispy they can get. So I messed that up by just not taking care of it in the meantime. And so I did actually have to put a little bit of PVA glue on the back of it. And that just helps when something is like kind of crunchy like that, just really brittle. That does help to just maintain some of the integrity of the leaf, and it gives a second skin to the back just so that when you push the needle through, it doesn't want to just like create a huge hole. So that's a little bit helpful, but that's what I ended up doing, 2 or so weeks after I had started, and I haven't gotten very far. It's
So,
my in
so
between project.
yeah, yeah.
all right, we have more questions here. Is you're just wanting to try and test stitching on a fresh leaf bind? So just any old, if someone wanted to try it, would you suggest that, just go pick a leaf and needle and thread and go?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's how I started. So I
Okay.
I would say that's what you should try. I mean, certainly you'll get a sense very quickly for what leaves work and what leaves don't. But yeah, I don't. I will work on them when they're just brand new, fresh, and I will also work on them when they're pressed. So either way is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And as they're framed, are the leaves mounted like butterflies under glass? Is that what? Okay.
Yep, yep, exactly like that. I mean, they're not. I don't use pins to mount them. And at this point, I actually do take them to a framer, and they take care of it, and that is glorious because it's one of the things that I that I most hate, like a framing and shipping. If I didn't have to do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Now, when you go
So,
to put, oh, sorry, Beth. Let me get this one. When you go to put needle through the leaf, do you have to support the backside, say, with two fingers, and then put the needle between them? I mean, there must be some support that you're giving to it.
Yeah, I definitely try to, and I do tend to try to hold the leaf very, very close to where I'm stitching it, and that just tends to like the whole thing doesn't want to bend as much if you're supporting it really close to where you're stitching.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
all
Go
right. And
ahead.
so is the leaf pressed before and during the stitching time? So you kind of keep it.
It depends. I mean, if I'm gonna walk away for the night, then yeah, I'll keep pressing it. But I
Okay.
don't. If I'm just gonna go downstairs for a drink or something, I don't. Um,
Okay.
I'll leave it out.
All right. And then someone is asking, Phyllis is asking, I have a magnolia tree in my yard. It drops leaves. So would I need to try those or fresh from the tree?
You can do both.
There you go,
Yeah, I
Phyllis.
have a magnolia tree in my yard too, and that is I like to use the ones that fall from the tree have usually really they're kind of this like golden brown color, and they sometimes have really interesting markings, which I'm interested in. So those are always captivating, and I have to stop myself from picking up all the leaves. Um, but yeah, so I'll use those. The markings, if you don't press them right away, do tend to fade. Um, and then I use them fresh from the tree too.
Yeah. Yeah. Was
All
that
right.
it? So Phyllis, oh,
That's it.
Phyllis left us. She went out to get leaves now, so she'll be
Right.
back shortly.
Okay. And Sandy has a question. What kinds of threads are best to use for this technique?
Hmm. Well, like I said, I'm couching, so I have used metallic threads as like the top thread, and that works just fine. But anything that you would normally couch with, And I am using DMC thread because I have a whole lot of it, and I figured why not. But I also have tons and tons of hand dyed thread and thread that is just was given to me. So I'll use that too. And I even use sewing thread as well for really fine. Um, if I just want if I'm working on something tiny and I want a really fine line, I will use that sewing thread, even though the tension is the twist, is much tighter on sewing thread. And so it does act a little bit different, but it's, you know, more or less the same. Thread
Just
is
go
thread.
for it. Just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Do you get discoloration in the thread or in the leaves because at the contact points?
Uh, If you're working on a fresh leaf, then at the contact points where you're punching the holes, those will be the areas that will dry out the fastest, because you're literally putting a hole and the moisture is leaving through those holes. And so sometimes there will be discoloration around them. But also, I've had it happen where if you're working on a particularly delicate type of leaf, it's actually bruising the leaf as you're punching holes in it, or as you're, if you draw something on the back. And so that's just something to be aware of. But certainly, as leaves dry out, they always shift in color. So that's just part of working with this material
Huh.
that, you have to take into account.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's before the time gets away from us, let's go to the pictures here and
Okay.
start looking at some of these things. So let's see. Make sure we're not muted. We're all good. Okay. So this first one here, are these French knots?
They are French knots. Yeah. And that's
That's
a,
what I love that. Most people struggle to get French knots into cloth, and you're doing it on leaves.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
lot of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. This piece is, so this was a piece that I did as part of a collection for the skincare brand L'Occitane en Provence, and that's actually being released currently for their Lunar New Year celebration. So that's why it's all red and gold. But this was the very last piece in that collection, and I was like right up against their deadline, and I had to fly to Geneva this summer to drop it all off. And this piece was like when I got to Geneva and I was in the hotel room, I did this entirely in the hotel room the night before I dropped the rest
Wow.
of it off. So
Oh, jeez. So you took all your stitched leaves with you to Geneva or whatever you needed for them?
yeah, shockingly, they had to be, I was like, it's just a little box of leaves and fabric really for the background. And to FedEx it, there was like less than a week, and to FedEx it was going to cost more than a flight.
Oh
So
my.
I just
Wow.
said I'll carry them myself, and then I'll know for sure that they'll get there safe.
Did you get the box inspected by the TSA people?
No, luckily I did
Oh,
not. Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
good. That's good.
that
Yeah.
is good. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Bringing foreign materials into another country. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Now
I
talk.
mean, they're covered in spray paint, so they're not
Oh, okay.
super dangerous.
So, all right.
Right.
So for most of us, making a French knot is a two-handed experience.
Hmm.
Uh, so same for you, I assume. So you have to lay the leaf down and
No, that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky. And after doing this for years and years, like I can do a French knot while holding the leaf and kind of using fingers on top and behind at the same time. It's a funny, like your hands learn how to do these like strange maneuvers. But yeah, very odd.
I'm tipping my cap to you at the moment. Wow. I mean, I can do French
So did
knots,
you
but I need
draw?
both hands. Yeah.
So did you draw where you wanted these, or you just kind of let it flow?
No. Yeah, I just started stitching.
Okay, beautiful. And you spray painted the leaf first, obviously, and then did the red French
Yeah.
knot.
Hmm.
Oh, gorgeous.
Wow. Okay. Next one. I love the ginkgos.
Yeah, me too. These are one of the leaves that are probably the trickiest to work with just because they are so delicate. And the vein structure, you can see the veins kind of start at the very base of that, where the stem is, and then fan out. And because the vein structure is uninterrupted from the bottom to the top, it's very easy for them to just want to split apart when there's any tension there. So these are one of the types of leaves that I always have to use some type of reinforcement with. But it definitely took me a long time, a lot of years, to figure out the process for doing that, and the right material and the right application of it. So it's kind of been a learning experience for a while. But yeah, this is black work patterning that I just kind of make up in this, like sort of like trace the leaf out and come up with like the size and shape that I want the pattern to be, and then I draw the pattern myself on graph paper, and then from the graph paper I'll kind of punch every vertice where there's a corner, and then I punch that using the template that I've created through the graph paper into the leaf, and then I have this leaf that's just got hundreds of holes in it. And if I didn't have a drawing to look at, I would have no idea what I was doing. So the drawing component is really important with these. But it's actually part of what I love the most is designing and drawing some of these
Yeah.
patterns.
Talk about starting and ending threads, especially with black work. Pin stitches, what?
Well, so technically it looks like black work, but it is not whole bind stitch. So it's not reversible on the front and back. And I am not, like, I understand the principle of that and I can do it if I'm really careful, but it just bends my brain to think about doing that. And so I always end up messing it up. And so I don't even try anymore. But this is just, starting and ending threads. The very beginning, I'll try to start somewhere that's not close to an edge, just because starting in the center and having a little bit of a knot is not saying the word knot isn't a problem. But sometimes if I'm working really close to the edges, you don't want to take the risk of that not popping over to the side and being able to see it at all, or at least I don't. So I try always to start more towards the center.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I get going, especially on some of these more heavily stitched pieces that I've been working on recently, I won't even knot it. I'll just like kind of tuck it in a couple different directions and use the tension of the thread that's already there to just hold everything in place. And I find that to be just a little bit more, I guess it's not, it's neater on the back for me.
Yeah.
Not that I care too much about that, really.
Right.
Having like the
More worried
lumps
about the
and the knots, I just don't love.
Yeah. Well, I suppose as I think about it, it's not like these things are going to get a lot of handling that you have to worry very much about anchoring threads. Yeah.
Yeah, they really shouldn't. And I do, if I'm concerned about it at all, I'll go back at the end and tack everything down with little tiny drops of glue as well.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Yep. Okay, the other ginkgo, my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this piece you can actually see, so that is, whereas the last piece was done with every single corner of every single stitch is like a different, it's like in and out to make a single line. This is done with couching. So the other one is a little bit more closely related to actual black work. And then this is just reminiscent of black work, but is definitely couched. And I've got the DMC thread, single thread of DMC, this like greenish, actually the same color I'm using tonight. And then on both the inside and outside of that, I've got a really super fine gold thread that's just tacked in place with this, the same corner points. So I love the effect of that, but it really does add quite a bit of, I mean, you're basically doing the same thing, the same design 3 times instead of once.
Right. Well, and in doing that, extra stress on the leaf too, going over the same areas 3 times. That's,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. So you have to be super duper careful.
yeah. And this leaf looks like it dried out quite a bit more than the other one.
Yeah, it's funny the ginkgo leaves, like if you pick them when they're green, they'll stay greenish, and if you pick them when they're, you pick them up really when they're yellow, they tend to stay yellow-ish as they dry. So this leaf is green, but it is quite dried, and so I was working on it, and it's, it looks fresh, but it wasn't.
It's, that's interesting that it it's dried and it's still
hmm
green.
hmm
Yeah, because I mean this other one with the black work almost looks fresh.
hmm
Yeah.
Nope.
I helped a neighbor rake up ginkgo leaves one year. When they fall, they just lay flat and they're just packed. Oh,
Mhm.
I found something else to do every year after that.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just not
I'm,
around that weekend.
yeah, yeah, can't help. Nasty.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
Well, they're an interesting
Inez,
tree because the leaves will be on, and then we have literally stood at the kitchen window and watched pretty much the whole tree empty at once, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep. They just all drop at once, which is kind of incredible, but
Yeah.
it's stunning when it happens.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yep.
all right. So Inez wants to know, do you work with beads on the leaves?
That is something that I have just started thinking about, and I have tons and tons of beads that I've been dying to start working with. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of one of those things that's like it's on deck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Susan wants to know, I assume they're handheld while stitching? So you hold them in
Yes.
your hand while you stitch. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Which, I mean, isn't, again, like it's not that big of a deal um, for a single leaf anymore because I've figured my hands have like learned how to do that. But in stitching multiple leaves together, that becomes really complicated. Just figuring out how to support the whole arrangement um, while you're working on just a portion of it. So there's
Yeah.
always a fun challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
When you're able to put beads on these things, holy smokes.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
get heavy.
Yeah. All right. Next one.
Right.
I think this is my favorite.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites too, actually. So this is a magnolia leaf, and this was done as part of a body of work that went to an exhibition at the Visions Art Museum last year, and the whole body of work was really centered around this idea of sacred geometry and just geometric expression as a way of thinking about just life in general and spirituality and the ways in which everything fits together and is connected. And without going too much into it, that's kind of what I was thinking about. So this pattern is definitely something that is an echo of some Islamic patterning that you would see, perhaps in tile work or in, mosaics that you might find. And so yeah, I mean, it was sort of challenging for me, even though this type of patterning is something that I look at quite frequently. But just figuring out how to actually make sure that I was weaving these threads over and under each other in the way that I needed to. I had to keep looking back at the pattern, constantly. Um, so it required a lot of attention, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't a bad thing.
So this looks like it's literally layered, like the underlying piece is all intact. It doesn't end, and you're not deceiving the eye. It's literally
Yeah, it's literally woven,
Wow.
like kind of like, yeah, it is indeed over and under in the way that it looks like it is.
Mm.
So did
So
you use
that was,
just like one long continuous strand of thread then when you were working on this?
um, I did. I mean, I'm sure I ran out of thread at some point, and if you look long enough and close enough, you probably will find where, you know, one or the other of the threads I had to, add more to the needle or something. But
Hmm.
I tried to kind of make sure that those were hidden as possible.
Hmm.
Like there's the like actually right where your cursor is a point at which you are that's probably a starting point right there.
Okay.
All right. And Deb wants to know, when stitching, do you try to go over a vein?
Um, it really depends. I mean, it depends on what I'm doing, but certainly on types of leaves, like magnolia leaves in particular, have really strong, tough center stem, veins. And so I actually try not to stitch through that if I can help it, just because you have to push so hard. And I've actually ended up like pushing so hard that I've pushed the eye of the needle into my finger,
Ouch.
which is
Oh.
gross. Which is gross.
Mm.
But it's just
Yeah.
that really thick, woody stem, especially after it dries out. So I try to avoid stitching directly on it.
Now, it looks like you've wrapped around the leaf. Is that on the edges?
That is, yeah, that's true. I mean, with this piece in particular, I wanted to give the sense of a continuation. That this pattern could continue on and doesn't just end at the edge. So it does indeed wrap around um, the sides.
Hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this was my favorite, definitely.
Hmm.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's one of mine too.
Yeah. All right, on we go. Wow.
um, This is a little, it's very, very small, actually. I think, is my hand in the picture in this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see my thumb there, and the flower, the buttercup is just a little bit bigger than my
Oops.
thumbnail. Oops. um, so it's teeny tiny, and this was a piece that I did as part of a demo during a class that I taught at the Tennessee, the Appalachian Center for Craft, which is part of Tennessee Tech University. And that was over the summer. And I just they had this really beautiful book by Eugene Grasset that I had never seen before. And it was all just kind of like Art Nouveau style botanical drawings. And so this was like a part of one of the motifs in the book, and I drew it out and just decided that I was going to stitch that because it was doable in the time frame that I had for the class. So this was my little class project, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's just a little buttercup.
And it looks couched, like, and that's what
It's
so you
couched.
couched it. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I have been really on a couching kick lately, and it's been my my favorite way to do this. And I think for really delicate materials, couching makes a lot of sense. Um, and I never liked couching. It was my least favorite stitch. I think when I learned to embroider, I was like, why would anyone ever want to couch? And now I use it all the time, and I love it. So it's a funny how things change. But
I love the colors on this.
Yeah.
The
yeah,
bright yellow.
Yeah, it
yeah,
really
me too.
works. Yep.
Hmm. With the
Excellent.
reds and the blue.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah, eucalyptus leaf. I love eucalyptus leaves, and these are just from like the grocery store. And I cannot. If the grocery store has them, I just tend to buy them. And which is still, but I do love having them. But then when they start to go, when they start to not be super fresh anymore, then I kind of, have this guilt that I can't throw them away because they're such gorgeous leaves, and they dry so beautifully. So you have so many eucalyptus leaves that I've saved, just wanting to work with eventually. But they were sitting on my desk at one point, and I was like, okay, today's the day. I'm going to do something with one of them. And I have just been really inspired by different growth patterns and patterns found in nature. And so I was looking at different like fungal, like the way fungi grow, and mushroom spores and gills. And so this is definitely very reminiscent of some of those patterns that you might see. But the whole thing is pretty small. I'd say it's probably no bigger than 3 inches tall. Yeah, so it's little.
But here, one of the things that I've been curious about since I saw the first one was how much you use the shape of the leaf as part of your art, and it seems like here you're taking advantage of that shape and giving some negative space and creating needlework that plays off of that shape. Is that just my imagination?
No, definitely not. And I do try to, I mean, it's kind of, I think about what I'm doing in sort of as a conversation that I'm having with this material. And I do try to let the material still have the leaf, still have as much of a voice as it does. I find them exquisite and remarkable and unique. No 2 eucalyptus leaves look the same on that, on that branch or in that bouquet that you have. It's like they all have a different shape or a different color, or like these beautiful freckles, or and it's like that for every single leaf. And so thinking about the individuality and the uniqueness of the material itself, and trying to be in conversation with that, but not overpower it.
Yeah. Well, this one sure works. It's really nice.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Oh. All right. I have them from what I thought were simplest to most complex. I think I did all right.
Yeah.
I love this. This is my favorite.
Yeah, this was probably, these were some of the first pieces that I was figuring out, this like couching method of stitching. And so they took me a very, very long time because
Yeah.
I was
Sure, yes.
learning, not because they're so complex. I mean, they are very complex, but also because I was learning how to do all of this and figuring out like how many different, like, do I need to start with, like, so you can see in that, like the one that's on the left, it's got in the very center, the orange lines have like a light pink line in the center, and then they're bordered on either side with orange, and then it goes back to the light pink, and then that has 2 different shades of pink. And so just figuring out all of that actually took quite a long time, and learning about colors that work well together, and if they need to be lined on both sides, and just all this stuff that you would actually think would be relatively easy to figure out with colored pencils doesn't always translate the same way to thread. And so it was just, you have to do it, and then if you don't like it, you have to undo it. So there's a lot of that in these pieces.
Undoing on a leaf. I don't know, that just seems incredibly difficult.
It was not, I will say it was not incredibly easy.
Folks, I'm trying to get this handled. Margaret, it's not showing up on Margaret's machine. So you guys keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, and so you sketched a design then first, and then you tried stitching it on the leaf.
In these particular cases, I was working from a rough sketch, but
Mm-hmm.
these pieces were much more, I was just working more intuitively. But generally, I do draw whatever I'm going to work on first. And sometimes I'll even watercolor or do more developed drawings and sketches. But um, these pieces were not that way. I just kind of had an idea of what I wanted them to look like and went for it.
They're just beautiful, and your color choices are just gorgeous. Isn't it just easier to start on a new leaf instead of unpicking and starting again?
Yes, except if you have, a decent amount of, and I feel like sometimes if I have a decent amount of time invested in something already, it is actually quicker to just unpick a line, as painstaking as that is,
Mhm.
rather than have to start completely fresh.
And do you know what type of leaves these are?
These are magnolia leaves.
Okay, all right. Magnolia leaves, Deb. We'll have to.
Mhm.
So those, I don't think mine look like that. I'm trying to, but I think
There's
I
all
live in the
kinds of
north, so I think
varieties.
mine are different.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, there's all kinds of varieties of magnolia leaves, and they do different things. Like if some of them look really dark green, glossy, and some of them look a little bit brighter green, and some of them have that velvet on the back, and some of them don't. And they all dry a little bit different, and they act a little bit different. So you very
hmm.
well probably have different trees than I do.
Yes, probably. Okay, and then Helen wants to know about how long did this take you to do?
Oh God. I mean, this is the hard thing. I mean, these leaves, like I said, were when I was learning and figuring out how to do all of this. And so they definitely took me, I mean, probably they took me m- more than a week each, and that is like sitting and working on them for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. So
Ooh,
it was a really long time. And
Wow.
again, it doesn't take that long at this point. I mean, it still takes a very long time, but not quite as long because I'm not figuring it all out as I go.
right, right. Yeah, I just
Well,
love the.
I can see how couching becomes your friend when you start doing this stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, this is when couching became my friend.
Yeah.
The beginning of our friendship.
Yeah, because to do this kind of stuff and go in and out all the time, I got to believe it would be really tough.
Hmm.
So Sandy
Yeah.
wants to know, does your choice of thread have more to do with the leaf to be stitched or with the design you have in mind?
Um, is that my choice? I guess both. I mean, these leaves specifically were part of a body of work that were for the U.S. Embassy in Sri Lanka, and so I was working with certain colors and certain types of botanical imagery that were reflective of that project. And so that was kind of like something that was influencing my decision making there, but definitely I try to choose colors of thread that are going to either be very subtle. Like I just think about the way that they're going to look with the leaf as it ages. So are they going to be very subtle? Are they going to be bold, even if they look this way now as the leaf shifts in color? And I have to kind of guess at what that's going to look like. I do know certain types of leaves what they'll kind of do as far as the direction of that shift and what they're likely going to look like when they've fully dried out. But um, yeah, it is something that I take into consideration, absolutely. And the type of thread that I use, of course, has to be, I wouldn't use a thicker thread or something with a more delicate leaf. That
Mhm.
definitely is influenced by the leaf itself.
So Anne wants to know, no pun intended, but have you tried stem stitch instead of couching?
Yes. Um, I mean, I think I've tried pretty much everything at this point. Um, And the reason that that doesn't always work out as well is because if you think about a stem stitch and the way that you pull, like you have tension around that material. So in order to go and make the next loop, you're having to put tension on it. And so to keep that line tight, there has to be tension. And where there's tension, you're literally squeezing the material together. And so if you're trying to do that with a material that, like a leaf, that it's not gonna react well, and it's actually gonna want to crush or tear in between those stitches. So that's why I've been using couching so much in the past little bit.
Yeah.
Just find that it really does work better.
Yeah. Huh. All right, on we go.
Yeah, this was part of that same body of work as well. And so, similar here, these just couching and sitting and couching.
Sitting and couching.
Yep.
Whoops.
And
Yeah,
so they commissioned you to make these designs.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So that was a lot of fun. And also just, it's fun to use color. I don't usually use this much color, and it was a lot of fun just, kind of like dreaming up what are the colors that are going to look good together, and what's going to be stunning, even as the leaf starts to shift in color, like what will stand out more and what will be a good color to use as a border. So just thinking about all of that, which is not my typical way of working.
Gorgeous.
It is. Just
All right.
beautiful.
That's another small one here, judging by your fingers.
Yep, it's a tiny one. That's another eucalyptus leaf. And that was a motif that I did in collaboration with a design company out of India. And so this was one of their block print patterns. And so I took their pattern and basically made it into an embroidery. And that's what this is. So the colorways were as an interpretation of their colorways. So they're not exact, but they're close.
I just love that. All right, Cheryl, we're gonna have to get some eucalyptus leaves so we can play.
Yeah, grocery stores all over the place are going to run out of eucalyptus tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. They're like seeing if we can stitch on it. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the way you're getting. You think about stitching on leaves, and you would just be happy to get some shape or form of thread on a leaf without it coming all apart. But the fact that you're getting some perspective in this, some dimension, you're really, I can tell that you're really able to work with the material instead of just exist with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really fun challenge, because it wasn't my design at all, and it was, something that I was attempting to make look like, someone else had decided that it would look. But B, it's really small. So trying to get, all of that detail and the perspective, and to sort of have those dark green lines within the petals be obscured by the lighter green lines, and just all of those little details it was a challenge, and that's, something that keeps it fresh and keeps it fun and keeps it interesting for me. And I think there's always, for me, like there's this sense of wonder is definitely at the heart of what I do as well. And just, thinking about how far you can push a material, and you can just push something past where you ever thought it could go. I think that's definitely important to me, and that's like the magic that keeps me doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
okay. So Anne is asking, what size of needles again do you use?
Size 12 betweens, and um, uh, the John James needles are, you can buy them from Clover or John James. And the John James are smaller than the Clover, but you can definitely tell that they're smaller, even though they're technically the same size. So I try to use the John James.
Okay. All right.
Do you get
And Gary, could you go,
what
could you
go?
move the camera in real close to the center of those flowers? I wanted to look at them a little closer. Just, yeah, thank you. They're just
Sure,
beautiful.
sure.
Thank you.
Do you get discoloration and tarnish on the needles as you do this? Does that become a factor?
Um, I
Apparently
don't
not,
think
huh?
so. No, no, not really. I mean, no, I haven't noticed that.
Hmm.
Definitely, like certain leaves will stain my hands. Um, but no, I haven't noticed it on the needles.
Yeah. Huh.
Hmm.
Got more, Beth? I
No,
can't.
that was it.
I can't get
That's all.
closer. That's the closest I can get.
Okay, I'm sticking my face on my computer now, so it's okay.
Okay. I mean, I'm here for you, Beth. I'm here for you, but that's the
Thank
best
you,
I can
thank you.
do.
There's only as much you can do. Okay,
That's right.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
people were commenting that the light green leaves look like the queen stitch.
Like the what?
Look like a queen stitch.
I mean, this is where I'm like so embarrassed because I don't know what a queen stitch is, but I assure you that it is couching.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
now
they
I'm going to
do
It's
need to jot
beautiful.
down. I need to look up what a queen stitch is.
stick with couching, Hillary.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, catching. Trust us.
Trust all of us on that. Just stick with couching. Yeah, yeah. It does have that queen stitch look to it, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, no. Yeah, stick with the couching. You'll be better.
You'll be
Don't
happier.
don't even look it up. Just don't even bother.
But she wants to learn something new, though, and that's
Oh,
what we're all
okay.
about, right?
I know. Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We're all
Look it
about
up, but stay away. Okay.
that.
All right. Here's
Oh,
one where again getting perspective and depth to it that really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a protea, and this is a special commission for someone who wanted the two flowers that they had in their wedding bouquet stitched, and so this was it's such an honor to do that type of work for someone and to make something that's really meaningful for them. And I think a lot about plants and just the ways in which plants are such signifiers of um, spaces and places and people, and they're so integrated into our lives. And so I'm out using plants and then also having this botanical imagery that I'm working with, and it is, that's my happy place. It's kind of like this amazing way to talk about everything that I love all at the same time.
You can really see in this one, because the one thing that I keep wondering about is what happens when the needle pierces the leaf, and you can see several places where you have, and it
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely localized. It doesn't the puncture doesn't cause it to deteriorate and expand or anything. And
Yeah, it doesn't.
up here at the top, the
Hmm.
threads just go through and it's just a hole. Yeah.
Right. And you can see, I mean, part of the thing about stitching and stitching on something that doesn't inherently have like a gap between warp and weft, you are puncturing through a membrane. And so if you push through where you don't mean to, that hole stays there.
Yeah.
And so, you definitely can see some of those, I guess I'll call them mistakes, but it's kind of just it's just the process. I haven't figured out a way, and you can see them. So, I mean, it's definitely could be considered a flaw, but it is what it is.
Well, yeah, but we're seeing, if I back off,
Yeah, you don't really notice them
they
as
they
much.
absolutely
Yeah.
disappear. It's
Yeah.
Right,
really
right.
really unfair, but I
I
think
mean,
it's
I notice them. Of course, but yeah,
Right.
definitely.
but it's instructive to see that, because I just would think that every piercing would cause more damage than just the hole, and it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't.
So you can have that happen, or change your mind and not worry about. Um, you don't have to go back and spackle in the holes, basically.
Yeah, there's no spackling. There is no spackling. And I mean, if you were to do an entire line and then you decide that you don't want the line to be there, then that's going to be obvious. And so if that happens, there's really no saving it.
Yeah,
Like, in my opinion, you
Right.
just kind of have to either figure out a way to work with that mistake or start over. So,
yeah.
So they want to know, how do you frog, how do you take your stitches out? Seam ripper?
Uh, not a seam ripper. I mean, I generally, if I'm going to take them out, I will just take whatever I'm taking off. I'll take it off the needle and then I'll use the needle to just pick up a stitch. I'll lift that stitch out all the way and then just go stitch by stitch and pull really carefully.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's no fun.
Right.
All right,
Right.
that was the last one. That
Okay.
was the last one. I'm putting this all back on camera now.
Okay.
There we go.
So they want to know, do you stitch more with cotton threads than silk?
I do. Yeah, I do have some silk threads and I have some metallic threads, but I tend to just use cotton. And part of the reason that I'm using cotton thread right now is because I am doing a lot of couching and covering larger areas, and I feel like the loft of the cotton works a little bit better for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Well, Hillary, thanks so much. Thanks for doing the podcast, and really huge thanks for doing this show. Folks, Hillary moved over the weekend, so she shoved boxes out of the way to be able to do this for us, and she will not turn her camera around. So
No, I will not. It's a real mess over there.
so we appreciate, amidst all that turmoil, I appreciate you doing this for us so we could experience your art. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad that it all worked out and we did it because this was a lot of fun.
Yep.
Thank you so much for inviting
Thank you.
Okay, folks, thanks a lot. We'll be back next Wednesday. Hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't listen to the podcast, do that. You'll learn so much more. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.